Hello, Pirate Nation. Welcome to another episode of Hall Talk. I'm your host, Kevin Hubler, and I'll be joined by my panel shortly. Basketball season is just around the corner, and Big East Media Day was Tuesday. Tonight, we'll look at Coach Tony Bozzella's women's team, which loses its leading scorer, Tabitha Richardson-Smith, and leading rebounder, Tiffany Jones, the first rebuild in the Tony Bozzella era. Libertia Gordon looks to ride the momentum of her breakout season last year, where she increased her rebounds per game from 2 to 7. We'll also look at TT Smith, who spent last season coming off the bench behind Shakina Richardson and Alicia Powell, and Katie Healy, who comes off a redshirt season as they take over the point. How will this young team fare in the Big East? All that and more. This is Hall Talk. Welcome back. I'll now introduce my panel, Dylan Schreiman and JP Prue. We have a lot to talk about, guys, so let's jump right into it. The women's basketball team, they lose their starting guards in Shakina Richardson and Alicia Powell. Now they have to rely on TT Smith, who's taking over at the point. She was a freshman last year, didn't get much time starting. She came off the bench mainly towards the end of the season. How is she going to have to step up to replace those two guards?
Well, what I'll say the first thing is TT needs to start distributing the ball and running the offense more. Last year, she would come in, kind of hog the ball a little bit, everything, but she needs to take some leadership, pass the ball, distribute it, make sure she gets higher assists. She only had 1.1 assists per game last year. If she gets it up to 3 or 4, she doesn't need to get like 5.6 like Kina did last year. Just get up to 3 or 4, it'd be a solid season for her. And
just to add on to that, controlling the tempo, like you said, when to go fast, when to slow it down, when to get into the half-court set. This is a player that only averaged 3 points a game last year, so it's a big improvement that she's going to step up as a sophomore. But stepping up the tempo and stepping up the leadership is very important for this young team.
Now, you guys are talking about the points per game and the scoring for this team. TT, obviously, 3 points per game. Mm-hmm. They lose their top scorer in Tabitha Richardson-Smith, who had almost 19 points per game. And they also lose the leading rebounder in Tiffany Jones. She had almost 9 rebounds a game. How is that going to affect this team? Who's going to have to step up to help out with the loss of those two players?
Well, Jaquan Jackson's definitely going to step up, in my opinion, the transfer that had to sit out last year from Louisiana Tech. You look at it, 2014 Conference USA All-Rookie team, she averaged nearly 10 points a game when she was there. And this is a team that seen her losing 75% of their scoring last season. A team that's
for the top 5
Yeah, for the top 5 scorers. Definitely going to have to rely on her and to give probably more than 10 points a game.
And I know I just said TT needs to pass the ball more, but she needs to hog the ball too. So we need her to simply, if it's there, take the layup, take the easy shot. And on the rebounding side, Libertia Gordon needs to get those rebounds. She came in with 6.8 last year, rebounds per game last year, and if she can get it up 8 rebounds, 9 rebounds per game, she'll be solid, and they'll be taken care of on the rebounding front.
And of course, we mentioned earlier, this is the first true rebuilding year in the Tony Bozzella era. 7 freshmen on this team, really the first team of his that is a rebuilding team. Now, he talked at Media Day about how they can play off of the men's success with a young team. He talked about taking that and leading it to his own team. What do you guys think of that?
Well, the men's team simply, they built and built and built. They were a team that, was known as the losers. They were going to come in 7th or 8th, they were predicted last year. But this team...
Right where the women's team is this year, picked 7th.
Yes, exactly. So just grind it. This team's young, freshmen, sophomores. Just doesn't matter what the outcome is. Take a positive. Just improve on what your improvements from the last game and just keep going forward.
It's a season of trial and error. You go through the non-conference schedule and then the Big East schedule is tough, but it's a season of trial and error, learning from your mistakes, recapturing that, moving on, watching the film, going and making those improvements to become better as the season goes on, because it is definitely a young team. You mentioned 7 freshmen. They also have 5 sophomores on the team. So 12 freshmen, sophomores. That's a young team for Coach Bozzella to coach.
And of course, now let's transition our way and look at the schedule for this women's basketball team. It's a weaker non-conference schedule for this team than it has been in the past 2 years. And when you look at it, they still have the perennial powerhouses, Rutgers and Princeton. They also have Minnesota, a team that was good in their conference last season. They finished in the top 5 in their conference. But now, of course, you have to look at it. This team they have a weaker non-conference schedule, but you kind of have to have that for this young team. How is this weaker schedule going to prepare them for a tough Big East schedule, or does it?
I think having these weaker teams at the front can only help to improve where they are. It gives them some confidence. Playing a team like Marist or Savannah State to start the season, they're not going to be any good. I'm sorry, Marist fans, but they'll get some confidence, because no one wants to go out and lose 20 games a season. So get some wins. That'll get under their belt, get them ready for Big East play.
It's about building early. I think they can get 8 or 9 wins in non-conference season. You look at Boston College at home. You mentioned Rutgers and Princeton on the road. I think those could be 2 possible losses. But maybe they could go in and steal one. He mentioned it's kind of easy stretch to start the season. I think their first test doesn't come until Princeton. So that's,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's 6
Really?
games.
What about Minnesota, though? Minnesota's a tough team in the
They
Big
are.
Ten.
I don't know. The Big Ten, they rated them pretty low.
They are,
That's
but
true.
I think they can go in, they can handle the game. I think the first true road test where you'll see the inexperience and see where this team at, that's the marker for me. When they go to Princeton on November 30th.
Now, of course, it is a tough opening half to the schedule for this women's basketball team. 4 of the first 6 conference games are against teams that were picked higher than them in the preseason coaches poll. Of course, they start off with St. John's, the defending Big East champion, knocked off DePaul last season. So you look at it, a tough opening half to this conference schedule. How's the young team going to fare? Again, 7 freshmen in a conference that is one of the best in the nation. How is this team going to fare in that?
Hopefully they can do 500 in this opening stretch. I think they're going to be more like 4 and 5 in the opening 9 games, because there is a tough stretch. Rattle it off: DePaul, Marquette, Villanova, Georgetown.
And I think right there, DePaul and Marquette back-to-back is going to be tough.
That's tough. And then Nova on the road. And Georgetown also on the road. If they lose that game, they might spiral out of control.
That could be a 4-game losing streak right there, but you have to look at it. This team did go 11-3 at home last year. I know they lost their top 4 scorers. It's a tough place to play. DePaul comes in. That's good. Obviously, rated top of the conference. And then you have Marquette, a team to watch out for. And you mentioned St. John's to start out with, but I think those Butler and Xavier games are key before that to kind of get them prepared for the big test, because I think those are 2 winnable games, even though they are on the road.
And of course, we talk about a tough team, another tough conference schedule. Where do you guys see them ending up in conference play? What do you think the overall conference record is going to be for this team?
I think around 500. I have him rated at 8-10. I think, but you have to look at Tony Bozzella and what he's done over his first 3 seasons. I know this is a young team. He's overexceeded expectations every year. Last year, they were predicted middle of the conference. They come out and finish tied for 2nd. So it's a team that's overexceeded expectations every single year under the Bozzella tenure. But I have them at 8-10, somewhere around 500.
And I agree with that. I have them at 9-9. I'll give them that win at Georgetown we talked about. So
It's a key game.
I know I don't want to lose control. So I have them going 9-9. That'll give them 6th, 5th place. They will not. I don't think they'll finish at 7 or lower like the coaches predicted them. But again, it's key. And the thing is, they're all young. So a 9-9 season, they can improve that next year.
I think 11-7 for me is going to be a number for them. I think that this Tony Bozzella era, it's been a team where you look at the hustle factor of his teams, and they really do know he knows how to get the team to pull together. Now let's take a look at predictions and expectations, guys. This team, we've been talking about, it's going to be another young team. They do have the weaker non-conference schedule that can help out that record, of course, but at the same time, it could also hurt them in that they won't be as prepared for conference play. So what are your guys' overall win-loss predictions? JP, I'll start with you.
So I'm going to be the positive one here. It's not too positive, though. 18-11. But again, it's the weaker opponents will get them wins. It's just the games against Princeton, Rutgers, even both games against St. John's, Marquette. Sometimes they're just going to be outclassed by older teams. And I just want to see them grow up. That'll be the bar of success, in my opinion.
I have him 1 game under that. I'm at 17-12. I think the Georgetown game is the difference. I think they will win 9 games out of conference and then 8 games in conference. It's a young team. I think if they steal a few victories because they are young and they can come out, and you mentioned Bozzella gets them motivated, they could possibly get to 19-ish wins. I just right now have them at 17-12, but it's definitely on the upside.
And of course, you look at it, for me, I think they're going to end up at 15-14. I'm going to go low. I don't think a team with 7 freshmen and a redshirt freshman that's going to be leading the point in Katie Healy, I don't know if this team is going to be able to get much above 500. I think 15-14 is a good number for them, especially because it is a weaker non-conference schedule. Now, we just talked about TT and Katie. What are your expectations for them? I mean, for me, I think that they're going to be TT is going to have the experience from playing in the postseason last year, but Katie, she's a bit of an unknown.
I think it's going to be all about improvement. That is the key to this team this year. I think beginning of the year, they are going to make some boneheaded plays. They will do things that, why are you doing this? Like, they'll take shots that aren't open. They'll pass people that are covered. Plenty of turnovers. But I think as the season comes on, they're going to mature. They're going to be playing like they're juniors, seniors. And it's just all about improvement.
I mentioned it earlier. I think it's a season of trial and error, but I think especially TT Smith, she has to take that role into the leadership, being the point guard of the team. That's maybe the most important position on the floor, in my opinion. Has to set the tempo, has to get the plays right, whether it's half court or transition. I think she's definitely going to take a role of leadership and general sense, just trial and error, making mistakes, but learning from them, learning from your coaches, and improving as the season goes into Big East play.
I agree with you guys. I think it is going to be a season where they are going to have to grow and mature. I think that that's really going to be the key for this team. Now, again, a young team, what young player are you expecting to step up the most? I mean, you have to look at it and expect it's not necessarily going to be an upperclassman, because there are a lot of upperclassmen on this team that haven't seen much playing time.
So I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to choose someone who's technically a academic junior. But redshirt sophomore Jordan Molyneux is.
It's 2 years playing.
That's true. That's true. It counts. Going to need to help out on the boards, because the Bird can't do it on her own. Mm-hmm. If they only have 8 rebounds a game, they will lose every game. So she needs to step up, get maybe 5 rebounds a game, just help out.
And she did mature a lot last season in her first year.
I think you have to look at the point guard. I think the point guard, if you look at teams across the country who succeeds, it comes from that position. It comes from setting the tempo. I think so. It has to get from the point guard, and she's the starter. She has to step into that leadership role. Like you said, posting his experience last year is vital in order to make those improvements.
Now, our last prediction of the day, guys, you just talked about Libertia Gordon, JP. Over under 8.5 rebounds per game for her. She's improved both years.
So I'm just going to go just under. I'm going to say 8.3. Why? Because I'm sure everyone likes nitpicky people. But 8.3 sounds like, because 6.8 last year, that's about one and a half improvement. That's pretty solid, but that 8.5 number might be just exactly what she has.
I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to go over. I think with the loss of Tiffany Jones, your leading rebounder, someone has to step into that role. I'm going to go just over 9 rebounds for Gordon.
I agree with you. I think it's going to be 9 rebounds a game for her. That's going to be all the time we have, though, for this show, guys. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Hall Talk. JP, I know it was your first time, and it was a great job by you. We do have next week our men's basketball show. It's going to be a year of learning for this women's basketball team, and Coach Tony Bozzella. We'll see what they have. Stay tuned next week as we have men's basketball coverage. Thanks for joining us.